here at the State of the Shoenion. Welcome to my living room. Upon this white backdrop that I set up, I tried to ensure that there wasn't a lot of wrinkles in it, and it seems as though the power tools have stopped across the street, which were quite annoying most of the day. And we're here talking about the Daily Trainer 2. I've got my music stand, and if you remember, I used to do these off-the-cuff Instagram Live, and frankly, those were the most fun. Those days were hilariously fun. I've learned to be a little bit more calculated in my approach as time has gone on, but nevertheless, try and keep that spirit alive. With the State of the Shoenion, I've not made one of these in a few years, if I'm remembering correctly, because time is flying and things are happening. Let's crack into it. I thought that I would start today by reading a simple letter that I included with the first round of media and review pairs that I have already sent out. And this is like an intention briefing. I like to think of it. Some may think that the Atreyu design ethos is a little bit avant-garde, and so I like to kind of give a little what I call an intention briefing. I hope you don't mind that I read it to kick things off and break the ice. I would like to thank you for taking the time to put the Daily Trainer 2 to the test. I am very proud to give it the tagline of premium simplicity everyday performance to represent Atreyu's commitment to significant performance upgrades in our lineup. When starting development of this model, I was focused on one idea: harmonizing the best materials for what I call the shoe trio. That is the outsole, the midsole, and the upper. I did not give myself any constraints on development cost. I did not try and keep the total bill of materials price low or the FOB low. I did not know what I would have to charge athletes to justify any production run. I simply just wanted to explore the best combination of components within the Daily Trainer's mid-cushion profile. When I learned the benefits of CPU, that's casting polyurethane, outsole technology, I knew the endeavor of premium simplicity was achievable. I needed 2 millimeters of thin outsole, but able to withstand and possibly exceed modern durability standards. This thin component should be designed to augment the neurological feedback loop from the foot to the brain and increase proprioception. In my opinion, this ground feel idea is foundational in the dedicated runner's routine and rotation. The Daily Trainer 2 couldn't be achieved without gripcast. That's the outsole. I believe in giving athletes an option for mid-cushion daily trainers to offer variability, but I wanted it to be packed with bounce despite its deviation from the current market trend of max stack. I personally sampled over 6 types of foam cocktails and found that a 40% P-backs, 60% supercritical TPE blend was most optimized and the most fun, and therefore worthy of the Cush name. As a side note, I also had a fun time naming each of the components Gripcast, Cush, and Astro Knit to further tell the story of their significance. I traditionally have not named parts, but I have adopted the process as a storytelling device in the materials education for our athletes. Overall, I have enjoyed the process of taking the previous framework of our Daily Trainer line and elevating the componentry with significant upgrades. I hope you appreciate my decisions, and I look forward to your feedback. I also included a spec sheet, and I will read that as follows. Model, Daily Trainer 2. Price, $170. Availability, Atreyu.com. Release date at the time I wrote this, which is January 28th, 2025, is TBD. It is still TBD. I am targeting mid-March and tracking at this moment a mid-March to 15th to the 20th, I think, in the release date. The forefoot stack is 24. The heel stack is 30 millimeters, and I will break that down for you right here. 15.5 millimeters. In the forefoot, you have 2 millimeters of outsole and 5 millimeters of sock liner allowance and about 1.5 millimeters of adhesives and strobel board for an all-in 24 millimeters in the forefoot with a 6 millimeter offset heel to toe drop at 30 in the heel. The weight of a men's 9, a US men's 9, is roughly 7.7 ounces. That was the most conservative and the heaviest of all the production pairs that I shipped over early and took a look at. Probably looked at about 4 or 5 different pairs, and 7.7 was the heaviest out of that bunch, and that's what I went with. Notable materials upgrades. Grip cast outsole. It's called Ground Resistance Impact Protection Casting Polyurethane. It's a mouthful. You don't have to remember it, but I'll get to that in a second. But it's called Grip Cast. It's 100% CPU featuring a unique dual layer design, 2 millimeters thick, 1 millimeter per layer. The goal is as little material as possible to promote ground feel while being incredibly durable. This is Grip Cast. I'm very proud of it. Cush midsole. Compression and uplift synchronization hub. I believe the hub of the shoe is the midsole. That's where all the parts converge, and thus with the Cush name. 40% P-backs, 60% supercritical TPE. The goal, pack every ounce with bounce while maintaining a mid-cushion stack for everyday training. And we have AstroKnit, which is advanced structural thread with reinforced orientation. It's an engineered mesh featuring high tenacity and elastomeric fibers. The goal is strong, comfortable, and it's supposed to match the durability of the Grip Cast outsole. Because what's a great outsole if you don't have an upper to stay intact long enough to put miles on it? Please email me for additional details or inquiries. That's what they got with the shoes. I thought that was a nice little intro. And now we begin a little bit of the riffing. I want to start with a quick backstory, and if I have to make a break, it's because it's kind of at the end of the day, and I don't know if my wife's going to walk in. So if I break it, it's because of that. I want to start with the backstory of why the shoe matters. You will find throughout this conversation it matters to me in a profound way for various reasons, but it all started about a year ago when I was taking a hard look at an adjacent model in our rotation called the base model. Many of you are familiar with the base model. Many of you love the base model, and you also know that I have claimed to discontinue the base model at this point. That is very true. But the reason that I can finally kind of tell the whole story of it is because deep in my head, like in my gut, I knew there was a problem with the base model. As the footwear industry progresses and foams and durability standards are getting better, I knew the base model didn't fall into this category. It didn't check the boxes that I needed to. Specifically, what came to mind was Dieter Rams and his 10 principles of design, and one of them is great products should last a long time. Essentially, I'm probably paraphrasing it, but essentially, make great use of the products and make them last as long as possible. I knew the base model wasn't doing that, and I was at an ethical moment where I just decided that it's not good enough. And so I started thinking, what do you do about this? Like, where do you go from here? Well, I had this very esoteric thought, and I kept going back and forth, back and forth. Do you turn the base model into the daily trainer, or do you turn the daily trainer into the base model? You can really think about that for a second. You can pause it and think about it and try and guess which way it went. I landed on turn the daily trainer into the base model. Why? Because the base model has superior ground feel. It's something I've always been obsessed with. I wrote it in my intro intention document, and I believe in it today. I'll make a quick aside. I had a friend of mine say the other day, it was a critique, and it was, you often try and sell things to people that they need, not exactly what the market wants. And I do think I'm guilty of that, but I'm also very, very proud of that. So the idea was to turn the daily trainer, which was, in my opinion, a great shoe, but it had room for improvement. You could drop the weight, you could increase the feel, and you might as well just take a look at all of the components and you're not done with it. I knew I wasn't done with it. I also knew the base model wasn't good enough. So the idea is to make focus on the daily trainer. What is the best it could be? And could you fold in the ethos, that ground feel, that neurological feedback? Our foot have these 6,000 to 10,000 nerve endings in them. And it's like an ear to the ground. It hears everything that the ground tells the foot. And you wanted that to go into your foot, up to your brain. Your brain then, and light speed tells back to your foot what to do. And you know how to run because of that nice little... that it's a really profound thing, and I've always been obsessed with it. Coach Steve Sisson calls it a relationship with the ground, and I make designs. The base model, the ethos of Atreyu started with this idea, like, what is the relationship with the ground? I had located it. I became obsessed with it. So can it be done with a daily trainer? And so it just got started. That's the backstory. Can it be done? So I set out on the journey. There's nothing I wanted to change about the geometry. I am a big fan of 6 millimeters. Why? Because there seems to be the alchemy in the sweet spot. It's not too high. It's not natural at no offset. It's just right enough for momentum, and it doesn't task the Achilles enough to where somebody who's new to it would have a double take, be like, what's going on with this shoe? I often tell people when I worked at a running store, if they went to like a 4 millimeter or, a zero drop shoe, I'd be like, just go on with like a few more weeks. I know your Achilles is it's feeling something. Give it more time. They'd always come back and be like, oh yeah, it was an adoption period. The 6 millimeters was always just kind of like where I ended up, and I just loved it. And so there was nothing I wanted to change in the geometry. The stack height in a mid-cushion trainer is, at 30, 24 millimeters, 30 in the heel, 24 in the forefoot, is a little bit on the lower side of a mid-cushion trainer, but it's a little bit more classic. It's more like a decade ago. And I'm obsessed with what happened a decade ago, for the record. I was running in great stuff like the 1400 New Balance, the Saucony Kinvara, the Newton Fate. It had the lugs. It was telling me to run on my forefoot and play around with the midfoot and the forefoot. And the Adidas Takumi Sen, I think, and I'm probably going to get the number wrong, I think it might have been the 4. That shoe in particular might have been considered a harsh Japanese running flat, like old school harsh racing flat. But I never saw it that way. They made me a better runner. They made me have a relationship with the ground. Like, this is where it all started. There are things that are unexplainable that happened to me, and I went from being like a kid in high school who ran cross country and shin splints and all this stuff to just taking a look at my form and listening to my stride, taking a look at my stride, understanding what the ground had to tell me and what I needed to tell the ground with my body. And it was a beautiful experience. And that's why I'm going to tell you what I believe in. And I do still believe that a shoe that can augment that experience is worth your time and your consideration. I'm proud of that. We still have the 5 millimeter ETPU liner that goes into it. And that's kind of an Atreyu little design hack that we've always done, is taking a look at something that's a little bit heavier, which is like ETPU, but extremely bouncy, kind of throwing it in the cocktail. So, where are we? I'm going to kind of collect my thoughts here so I don't go too far off the rails. It's my love letter to proprioception, and why I was exploring folding the base model ethos into the Daily Trainer line. And so what happened was I knew I needed something to anchor on. I came across some intel from one of our liaisons, our factory partners. And they said, you should take a look at this stuff. It's called CPU. And I was like, I don't know what CPU means. Like, who's using it? Didn't seem like a lot of folks were at the time. I've seen some shoes come out to the market now that I believe are CPU. Sometimes they'll hide it way back on the compounds. And I think we're seeing a few shoes come out in the market today that have it in the recent weeks and months. But there were some Chinese brands that were using it in their shoes. And I heard that there were some basketball shoes that were using it. And I was like, yeah, we'll give it a shot. Like, they said it was extremely, like, remarkably durable, very light. It's like It's like half the weight, twice the durability. I'm like, well, shoot, like this sounds great. Let's give it a shot. So what I did is I went and designed some molds. I did it in Rhino. Did some 3D printouts of a design and threw it up on my Instagram and had people vote on the design. And this is what came out. And when I spent the money to make this mold and put it on a shoe, it blew my mind. So let's put a pin in that idea real quick, or a paperweight, and let's move on to what that shoe also had into it. So I told you I was sampling some foams, and it's no mystery that Arkema's Peebacks or Peeba and Peeba blended shoes or 100% Peebacks, they're just the cream of the crop. And so I started looking at what Atreyu had access to and see if our foam supplier, what could they. So I just said, let's rip the Band-Aid off. What's the best stuff we've got? And we started sampling a few different foams, and I came across 40% Peebacks and 60% TPE. And it's so amazing. It's something you kind of need to try. You probably have an idea of it because a lot of shoes in the industry are using it, but it's basically what I'm trying to say here is I don't think that Atreyu should be second, in terms of second rate, in terms of materials. So I was like, yeah, let's just go for it. I love this foam. I've been running on it, and I was testing it with this crazy new compound with this cool design. And honestly, it blew my mind. It was just, let me go ahead and do something a little bit odd. I'll show you the shoe on my foot. It's used. Now this particular shoe, I will say that I stopped counting. I stopped keeping track, but I think I logged about 400 running miles in them, and I walked on them every single day for 4 to 6 months or more. This was the first sample I got of the Daily Trainer 2, and I still wear it today. The first thing I did, and I'll talk about the upper in a second, but the first thing I did was I took an X-Acto knife right here, and where's it on the other shoe? I cut off an entire strand of the cross section of one of the high tensile fibers. I was just like, let's see if this thing unravels. Let's see what happens to it. And I started running on it. There was no unraveling. I was like, man, this upper is really nice. Again, I'll talk about that in a second. And what I'm looking at right now is to me is something that frankly, I could have only dreamt of 5 years ago when I started Atreyu. Like, for sure, I've never seen anything like it. This outsole still has the surface texture all the way. There's a little bit, it's still there on the toe. There's leaking or dripping dirt all over the place. But there's surface texture, which is the diamond, micro-millimeter diamond surface texture. And I'm still looking at it all the way up until right here in the heel. And again, 1 millimeter on the black part, 1 millimeter on the clear part. So 2 millimeters thick. And I am just like blown away that the black part isn't even degraded to where you can see the clear part up to it. It's ridiculous. So of course I'm like, this was the most significant part. I was like, everybody knows what a great foam is. Like, we got that. We just got to use it. We have to do it. It's awesome. It's perfect. But this outsole was the thing that really gave me the emotional momentum. Like, this can happen. Razor thin to promote ground feel. And when I started running in the shoes, it felt like a base model that was like 25 miles in. If you know the base model, it's got this magical thing that happens around 20 to 25 miles in. Imagine a shoe that just kind of feels like that from the time you put it on. That to me is the Daily Trainer. I could stop this video right here and say that to me is the most. I'm kind of blown away by it now, but I'll just move on and quickly talk about the upper. is there were some shoes that I noticed that had high tenacity fibers in them, and I was like, let's go ahead with that. It's an engineered mesh. I can probably get fancy with the design. I can get the computers to put little squigglies on it, but you know me, like I'm kind of mono-visioned when it comes to the design. You know, I updated the tongue a little bit to eliminate the stitches, and we're going to use heat press. It's a beautiful tongue. But this upper, it didn't rip in the toe. It didn't rip on that thread that I cut with an X-Acto knife. It did exactly what I wanted to. It's extremely comfortable. It's pliable. It's breathable. Airflow, keep your foot dry, especially in the Austin summer. And if it's in the winter, you know, you can wear some warm socks, but I really do believe in a air flowing, contributing upper. And it's not much to say about it other than the fact that I think it's beautiful. By the way, here's a little fun fact. I wanted something that had, like, if you're on the Adobe Illustrator, opaque button where you can, it's like a little slider nozzle thing. You can go from like 100, which is like not see-through, to 0, which is completely see-through. I needed something at 80%, just 80, like not, I don't want to be too transparent like the race model. I want it to be just enough. So my hand's behind it. You can kind of see the sock, white socks, black socks. It kind of works with it. So I was on the hunt for like the right opacity, for lack of a better thing. But I thought that was a little fun fact. So the shoe trio essentially came together in a way that I was just absolutely thrilled about. And what I started working with colors, we came up with this. Of course, it's going to come in the team colorway, which is that's our calling card. Like, we're known for it now. The Bauhaus NASA style, is awesome. It's very Atreyu at this point, and I'm pumped about that. But I did try some laces on it, and they were all white. And I was like, you know what? We're going to put some white laces in the box because this just looked too classic to leave on the table, and it was really hard. Do we use yellow laces or do we use white? By the way, my hockey skates, CCM, forget which model, 942 maybe, the Tax, had yellow waxed laces. My love with yellow laces came from back in the day when I was a kid, I played ice hockey, and those yellow laces were they were so cool. I think that's why I love them today. But this is classic. And then we have the standard issue colorway, which is your more subdued, and frankly, I just think is beautiful. Kind of goes with everything. And so we're going to launch with team, and we're going to launch with the standard issue. And that's kind of the launch DNA from here on out. I know we used to do a bunch of crazy colors, and that was amazing, but I just love these two colors, and I think that's kind of like the blueprint now, is to launch a new model with a team colorway and a standard issue, which are they got some lore into the names. I remember the original standard issue colorway number 1, which was gray, and then if you really remember, the standard issue colorway number 2 was black. That was the base model in like year 1. Yeah, so those were cool days. I miss those days. And I wanted to, before I get into like why they're priced at $170, I wanted to quickly say something that I'm proud about. What I didn't put in the letter is this shoe essentially represents, it's not necessarily closure for me because I don't want to stop, moving the needle. But this is very dear to me. This mission is very dear to me because this is truly what I would call a love letter to the classic geometry resto mod, whatever you want to call it. Those shoes of a decade ago that just felt so good. I can't imagine, flash back to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, having these types of rubbers and these foams. And I think this is a very underserved, you can call it geometry, you can call it whatever. It's an underserved piece of the market that's inundated with max stack, which I get completely. I love it. It's awesome. I'm never going to lose my intention with that relationship to the ground, as Steve Sisson would say, or increasing proprioception or ground feel. This shoe represents that journey. And although I'm not done with it, it kind of feels different. Every shoe I've ever made, I would get it in and I'd be like, oh man, I can't wait until we can use that foam or do that thing, or, I'll learn more about uppers and higher, I know it rips in the toe just a little bit after, 150 miles, but one day with this shoe, it's kind of like my wish list is in this shoe. Like this is like what I would consider I would say, if I'm just going to be honest with you, it's probably the most profound thing I've done for myself and what I hope that you enjoy as well. But definitely this represents a really big piece of what I've been working on for a long time. And honestly, I know that the race model was significant and, the artist was significant, but this is different. And yeah, there's not too much to say about that. And as I come to the end of this, I'd like to address pricing. I got my first critique on pricing. How could you do this? How could the pricing be at 170? Well, I understand that sentiment completely, and I definitely want to just kind of talk about it. I mentioned that I'm not the person I was 5 years ago, and I don't have the same assumptions that I had 5 years ago. And frankly, I'm older now. It's just I've come a long way, and I've learned a lot. Probably, I've run this business for 5 years, and I had a restaurant before that. I was a self-employed musician. I've learned a lot over the past decade, but specifically the last 5 years have been profound. One of the things I think are lacking maybe not specifically in the culture of running, but what I hope is not lost is the idea of small business. I just asked ChatGPT the other day, I put in our numbers and I said, kind of what's the factor of how small are we in this industry? I think it came out to anywhere between 2,000 and 50,000 times our size was the brands that you're probably aware of. To me, I got real excited because and I'm not saying we deserve more credit, so I don't want that to come across like we deserve more credit, but we are a small business. I am in this living room right now doing what I love to do, which is make the best running shoes I can. I have the opportunity to do that. I don't know if I'll have the opportunity to do that forever, and I can guarantee you that I did not have that opportunity with undervaluing our prices. My wife tells me all the time they were criminally low, and you just tried to do it to give affordable shoes, and it was a good value to have, but it wasn't a healthy business. I made assumptions that were just not right, and I'm proud of what we've earned, and I think we've earned our way into being a boutique brand that offers high quality running experiences, and I couldn't be more proud of that. Somebody else said it's just you want to line your pockets with money. I can tell you one thing about that. That's absolutely not true. I just want to keep my job. I love what I do. I'm a designer. I'm not a business person. I've decided that I'm not good at marketing and I'm not good at business. That's just all there is to it. I'm good at being myself, and that creative side of me just loves shoe design. And sorry, this is a difficult one for me to articulate because I want to make sure that I don't leave anything on the table. I think the world is a better place with lots of small businesses. And to all of those folks that are starting up new shoe companies or slide companies, casual shoe, whatever you want to do, your restaurant, whatever, I hope that you have, like I said in my last video, the kind of support that I have. But I also hope that you can learn that the world is better with it than without it. So thank you for allowing me to take a hard look at the numbers and what Atreyu does, and to know that 170 is a very healthy price point for us because of the sales volume, our company size. I'm not lining my pockets. It's all going into development. I wish I had the camera just shut down right as I was making that final statement. If you give it a shot, know that I'm grateful because I know it's a chance. I know it's not inexpensive. We're all trying to save our money and we're all kind of uncertain about the economy. I just appreciate that you give me a chance to do this, and I don't take it for granted. And if you don't like it, you can send it back. If you do like it, just know that you're supporting a small business. And for what it's worth, I think that the world needs more Atreyus out there. You know what I'm trying to say. So yeah, that's about all I have for today. This one's been fun. Thank you so much for joining me if you made it this far. I'm really, really pumped about this shoe. I'm proud of this shoe. If you're ever in Austin, come run with us. I think that's where I'm going to end it today. The state of the Shoenion. Who would have